who very often it has been said, if somebody has a very mischievous sense of humor, he or she has a puckish sense of humor, you know.
Yeah.
Now, Puckin the Robin Goodfellow
Yeah.
explains the title, you know, in the epilogue of the play when he says, if we shadows have offended,
Yeah.
think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while the visions did appear.
Yeah.
And therefore, the title is very significant and suggestive of the theme of the play. Remember, it's a dream world. And in dream, you don't have a sequence, a logical sequence. Thoughts come in a very disordered manner. Similarly, here also, you find very irrational behavior on the part of the characters also. And it is a life which is seen through the prism of a dream. It is a midsummer night, the season of the year when Elizabethan superstitions ruled supreme. Herbs developed magical qualities and magical powers. Strange creatures appear. For example, here we have a flower called love in idleness. And the juice of this flower, when it is squeezed in the eyes of the lovers, you know, then it's a mad, mad world of the lovers. And this is symbolic of the actual love in idleness in young lovers' heart. Young people change their minds. Their minds are so fickle. And therefore the title is so significant that you don't ask questions. If I use the term which was used by T.S. Coleridge, willing suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
So it's a dream world, a world of fantasy, an imaginary world which is far from reality, but at the same time, it is a world which is rooted in reality, I would say.
Yeah.
But it is an entertaining world. And the purpose of a comedy is to entertain. And as I said, it's a marriage song, and naturally, people dance, merrymaking is there, everything is forgotten with gay abandon.
Yeah.
People dance, and there is all-round merrymaking, where you don't ask questions whether this is possible, whether this is done or not. You know, it's a world where people enjoy themselves to the hilt, and therefore, the title to my mind is most appropriate. It is Midsummer Madness.
Yeah.
And yet, everything ends on a happy note.
Yeah.
Because Shakespeare believes that every human being is entitled to happiness. This is a right that Shakespeare grants to the audience, that you are all entitled to happiness. And therefore, the play ends with 3 weddings when the church bells begin to ring, you know, and weddings take place, and everything ends on a happy note. There is harmony and happiness.
Yeah. So this is very important for our students to understand, because a Midsummer Night was very important for Elizabethan audience. It was
Yes.
very meaningful. The title was very meaningful
And
for
remember,
the
Ketan bhai, that
Elizabethan
in the
audience.
midst of winter, you know,
Yeah.
in 1595,
Yeah.
96, you know, he visualized an ideal summer.
Yeah, ideas.
I mean, just imagine the time is winter,
Yeah.
and he visualized a summer.
Yeah.
This is Shakespearean genius at work, I
Yeah.
would say.
So there was this belief in the supernatural elements, belief in the magical possibilities
Yes,
of a
exactly,
midsummer
exactly.
night, and that must have
The
appealed to
supernaturals appear, you know.
Yeah, the
Yes.
supernaturals appear. There are magic potions,
Yes,
and there are
yes.
magical herbs and flowers that can transform a person that can affect a person in a very significant
Absolutely,
way, make
absolutely.
him or her love something. So this is a highly imaginative
And
world.
imagination runs riot, you know,
Runs
in a
riot,
Shakespearean
yeah,
comedy, and especially in A Midsummer Night's Dream, as I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
which is
Very right.
which is a distinct type of comedy from the other comedies that Shakespeare has
Yeah,
written.
here, yes, here the imagination is at its height.
Oh, yes.
And you rightly remembered S.T. Coleridge's phrase that it is a play in which we have to enjoy it with willing suspension of our disbelief.
I mean, he
Otherwise,
wanted
yeah.
that in order to enjoy literature, we have
Yeah.
to suspend our disbelief.
Disbelief,
But
yeah.
especially in order to enjoy this play, you
Yeah,
know, you have
absolutely.
to suspend your disbelief for the time
And
being.
the play can be summarized as exuberance of imagination
Yes,
and
yes.
emotions.
Very
That is
true,
very
very
right.
true.
So title is very significant.
Very significant, yes.
Of the play. After title, the next important element that we can talk about is plot construction. Here I have given a very brief, very sketchy outline of the
Yes.
of the plot that we usually find in most of the Elizabethan comedies. There is either a father or a family that opposes a love affair between a young man and a young woman, and then complications and confusions follow, until finally, after some dramatic reversal, the lovers are united and the play ends happily. But beneath this bare outline of the plot, there is a very seasoned, very talented dramatist working in the knitting of the plot, in which he has knitted various threads of stories together.
Very
There
true.
are subplots, for instance. There are three kinds of characters, as we shall see later on when we come to the characters. That one is Athenians, the courtly people,
Yes.
and then there are the mechanical bottom end is company, and then there are supernatural elements. So all these three completely different sets of people, they are resolved into a one, and the play never appears to be loose in plot construction.
True.
It is a very well knit plot that we find in the play. So plot, how does it
Yes. Yes.
for instance differ in this comedy from other comedies, or how does plot construction, Shakespeare's plot construction, differ from tragedy to comedy?
Ketan bhai, remember that in a Shakespearean comedy, you have several plots. Say in the prison play also, the plot is composed of several stories,
Yeah.
but they are woven together with ingenuity into a harmonious whole. And that is Shakespearean touch, I would say. For example, the first is the story of Theseus's wedding. Then you have the story of the Athenian lovers, Hermia, Helena, Lysander, and Demetrius. Then the third is the story of Oberon, Titania squabble, the quarrel between the two. The fourth is the artisans, the mechanicals as they are called, Bottom and his company. And then finally, you have Pyramus and Thisbe. So you will see that there are 5 plots in a way.
Yeah.
The whole play is composed of these 5 plots. But look at the Shakespearean magic, the Shakespearean touch. All these are, as I said, woven together into a harmonious whole. Never for a moment we feel that this is a kind of a patchwork. They are so inextricably interwoven that the impression that is created is that of a whole plot. You know, the first is the link that holds the rest together, and that is the story of Theseus's wedding. This is the link, you know, the thread which almost runs through the play and which holds the play together or the plot together. And it is at Theseus's wedding that Hermia's fate is to be decided. The fairies have come to celebrate this occasion, and for this wedding, Bottom and his company will perform. They will enact the play Pyramus and Thisbe. Remember, the play is about broken friendship. The play is also about Hermia's defiance of her father and of Athenian law. The father Aegeus is a typical father of a daughter, I would say. He doesn't want the daughter to marry the person, the boy whom she loves. He has settled for another person whom the daughter doesn't like. Hermia wants to marry Demetrius, but the father wants the daughter to marry Lysander. But here is a girl who defies the authority of the father and the authority of the Athenian law. And this speaks volumes for the courage that this girl has shown. And this is exactly what Shakespeare is driving at, that love, as he says in one of his sonnets, love admits of no impediments. And if there are impediments, they are to be overcome. And for that, lovers need courage. They need the spirit of defiance. And here we have a daughter who, as I said, defies the father and defies the Athenian law. Remember, in Othello also, Desdemona defies the dictates of the father and elopes with Othello, who has, as he says, declined into the vale of years. Desdemona is hardly 18 or 20 and Othello is 40, 42.
Yeah, 40.
See the difference. But when it comes to true love, all these differences of caste, of color, of creed, of ideology, they all disappear. They melt into thin air. And this is the message that Shakespeare conveys. Another important thing is that Lysander and Demetrius both love the same girl, and therefore the complications arise. Normally, Ketan bhai, we talk about love triangle.
Yeah.
But here we have, I would say, love square.
Love square.
Where two pairs of lovers are involved.
Yeah.
The inconsistent behavior of the lovers. Demetrius is inconsistent, Lysander is inconsistent in bestowing their affection on a particular girl. Both love the same girl. It becomes farcical almost. And once again, we remember or we recall the words of Puck, Robin Goodfellow,
Yeah.
when he witnesses this inconsistent behavior of the lovers, the irrationality of the lovers, he says, "O Lord, what fools these mortals be."
Well, trust me, yes.
So you will see that the plot has been ingeniously conceived by Shakespeare.
Yeah.
All the disparate elements are ultimately harmonized. And this happens even in The Merchant of Venice also, for example, where there are subplots,
Yeah.
Yeah? But ultimately, all of them are united into a harmonious whole. So this is Shakespearean magic or Shakespearean touch, I would call it. And at the same time, there is a thread which runs through the play on which these subplots are hung.
So, yeah, very rightly observed. This shows us that Shakespeare completely disregarded the proverbial three unities that
of
are
time, place, and
usually,
action.
yeah,
Oh,
usually associated with Aristotle.
Very
Though
true.
Aristotle mentioned only 2 of them, the third one was not there in Poetics, but it later on got included into that, and there is unity of place, action, and time. But there is unity of action, that is the most important unity of all,
Right.
and that we find in this. Comedy also.
Yes.
And another thing that you mentioned, that there is a struggle, there is a constant a war between a battle between the law and individual.
True.
The Athenian law gives the power, gives the authority to the father to marry his daughter to a boy whom he likes, and if that was the law, that if the daughter does not want to marry the person chosen by her father, then she would have to either die or lead a life of permanent celibacy. She would have to go
Go
to a
thee
church
to
and-
nunnery. Go
Yeah,
thee
go
to nunnery, he
that's
says.
what-
Go thee to nunnery.
go thee to
Either you
nunnery.
die.
Yeah.
You see, this is like Hobson's choice.
Yeah.
Huh? You are between devil and the deep sea.
Devil
Either
and the
you
deep
die
sea.
or you go to the nunnery.
Nunnery, yeah.
Right? These are the two choices
Yeah.
before the girl, the
So
maiden.
this contrast between the law or the system, institution, and individual on the other hand, the
Individual
person,
freedom, individual freedom, yes.
that contrast operates in the play, and similar many other contrasts we find in the play.
And
that,
Ketan bhai, I would also add one more thing here. That think of the fact that Shakespeare married to a woman who was almost 8 to 9 years senior to him.
yeah,
Huh?
Yeah.
And his married life lasted hardly for 2 years.
yeah,
You know, when he left for London
Yeah.
to eke out his existence or to eke out his living. And yet here is a man
yeah,
who could produce some wonderful love comedies.
yeah, wonderful.
The man who had never fallen in love, remember?
Yeah,
And whose married life lasted hardly for 2 years.
Yeah.
See, the conjugal bliss perhaps he did not enjoy.
yeah,
And yet, Shakespeare could produce some of the most astounding comedies
Yeah.
that the world has ever seen.
yeah, very right.
And the difference between a tragedy